Welcome to lesson 6.5, day 2 on synthetic division. Today we're going to find the quotient using synthetic division and also apply the remainder theorem. For synthetic division, you are taking a polynomial that I'm going to call f of x, and you're dividing it by a very specific quantity. It must be a binomial in the form of x minus a, where a is any real number. Therefore, synthetic division only works when the function is being divided by this factor in the form of x minus a. If you do not have a factor in that form, you cannot use synthetic division, and therefore you'd have to use long division. So let's look at some examples of x minus a. So the first example is this x minus 2. Okay, so that is definitely in the form of x minus a, where a would equal 2. Well, we also have x plus 3. That is also in the form, and in this case, a is equal to negative 3. Some non-examples. 2x plus 1. That coefficient in front of the x, if it's not a 1, then you cannot use synthetic division. This other example where you have an exponent other than 1 on the x, you cannot use synthetic division. You'd be back to long division. So let's look at an example of how synthetic division works. I have my polynomial, 2x squared plus 7x plus 6. It's being divided by x plus 2. So the first step you want to do is figure out what your a is. In this case, our a is equal to negative 2. Because if I substitute in negative 2, x minus negative 2 gives me that x plus 2. Okay, the next step, you're going to write your a over here on the left hand side, negative 2, and you're going to kind of put this box around it, or half of a box. Then each of the coefficients of your polynomial, 2, 7, and 6, go in this first line, 2, 7, and 6. You start in the far left column and you add. Well, this is always going to be the very first number because there's nothing to add to it. So 2 plus nothing is 2. So you're basically just bringing down that first number. Then you are going to multiply this a, this negative 2, times this sum, so negative 2 times 2, and you put your answer in this spot right here. So that will be a negative 4. We add down the column, so 7 plus negative 4 is 3. I multiply the negative 2, that a, times 3 to get negative 6. It goes in this next column. Add straight down. 6 plus negative 6 is 0. And again, we kind of put this half box around it. That gives us our remainder. In this case, our remainder is 0. It's a good habit to get into is putting this box around it. That way you know that that number is the remainder and not part of your quotient here. So these numbers in the bottom row are the coefficients for your quotient. So starting from the right, this 3 is going to be the constant, or you can think of it as 3 times x to the 0 power. And then moving to the left, that will be the coefficient 2, attached to x to the first power. If we had any other numbers to the left of that 2, we would just keep increasing powers, x to the second, x to the third, x to the fourth, and so forth. Now most of the time you won't see it with these exponents. We would write that as 2x plus 3. And that is your quotient. Since we got a remainder of 0, we actually can say, hey, this is a factor. And so the two factors of 2x squared plus 7x plus 6 equals x plus 2 times 2x plus 3. All right, if you will open your book to page 326, we're going to do example B together. So pause the video if you don't have your book ready. All right, so let's look at this problem. We have the polynomial 4x to the fourth minus 3x squared plus 7x plus 2 divided by x minus 1/2. Now, I did say at the very beginning that a can be any real number. So in this case, it's going to be a 1/2. It doesn't have to be an integer. So I'm going to zoom in. First step is to find a. And since we have x minus 1/2, that fits our x minus a, which means a is then 1/2. Now your book's already done the next part where you bring down the coefficients. So the 4, the 3, the 7, and the 2. Something you've got to notice, we are missing a term right here. We're missing x to the third power. So just like in long division, when you bring down those coefficients 4, we have to bring down a 0 for x to the third. Then -3, 7, and 2. And of course the a goes here in the front in that box. So I'll put that 1/2. Now your book actually just has us recopy everything down here to the bottom. So I'm going to move my 1/2 here to the bottom. We have our coefficients, and let me move my screen down. I'm going to zoom in. All right, so let's go through these steps. We're going to take 1/2. Well, first of all, we brought the 4 straight down. The 1/2 times 4. And we're going to put the answer right here. Well, that is simply 2. So I'm going to put a 2 here. Add straight down. 0 plus 2 is 2. Now I'm going to multiply 1/2 times 2. That gives me 1. And the answer goes in the next column. So that will be 1. -3 plus 1 is -2. Again, I'm going to take this 1/2 and multiply it by -2, which will give me -1. Add straight down, 7 plus -1 is 6. Multiply 1/2 times 6, which gives me 3. That goes in my next column. Add straight down, and I get 5. And notice your book's already put that square in there for you. So 5 means it's going to be our remainder. So I'm going to have you actually write the answer a little bit different than what your book is asking you to do that out. So I'm going to actually cross off this left side. And we are going to simply write the quotient. So we have 5 as our remainder. So right there's our remainder. So I'm going to start with the 6. I'm going to leave some space to the right. So 6 is my constant, plus, then I have a -2 times x. The next term is a +2, so I'm going to increase my degree, so 2x squared. And the next coefficient is 4, so that gives me 4x to the third. Now I have to work with this remainder. So just like we did with long division, we're going to put a plus sign, and we're going to put 5 over. And if you recall what our divisor was, that was given in the original problem. That's your x minus a. So x minus 1/2. Now typically we don't include two fractions within a fraction, but for this example, since your book used a fraction, we're just going to stop right there. And you understand how to write the quotient. Clarification, I'm going to come back here and show this 6 goes with this 6. I'll change colors here. -2 goes with this -2. This 2 goes with this coefficient. And the 4 goes with that 4. Alright, before you're finished with the video, at the bottom of page 326, your turn number 6, I want you to use synthetic division to find the quotient. That's changing the directions for that problem just a little bit, but use synthetic division, find the quotient, and I have 2 quiz questions for you here at the end.